So Miami didn't land DJ Pickett last night, but there still are some important top cornerback targets that the Hurricanes are very much in the mix for.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're available free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So on this episode, we're going to talk about one of the top recruiting experts and scouting experts in Florida about Miami's tone on the recruiting trail, where obviously they are landing some big-time talents. They've got a top 10 class in the country, despite recruiting off of a 7-6 season last year. I want to scout the defensive backs who are already in the building in the class of 2025, but of course, who Miami is still going after. And no one better to bring on than our guy, Larry Blustein. Last night, DJ Pickett put on the LSU hat, not the Oregon hat or the Miami hat. Obviously, Mario Cristobal is not going to stop recruiting Mr. Pickett until National Signing Day, but LSU, of course, and Corey Raymond has done a tremendous job in Pickett's recruitment. So LSU has a big upper hand, of course, with DJ Pickett. But, Blue, we're not going to have to wait more than a couple days until Miami's next cornerback target is going to come off the board, and that's Jaboree Antoine, 4-star cornerback out of Westgate High in New Iberia, Louisiana, 6'1", 170 pounds. The story on him is interesting, Blue. Jaboree was committed to LSU, decommitted from the Tigers about a month ago, and now it's down to Miami versus LSU. And normally I'd say, hey, like, why decommitting from that school? Why would he go back there now? But obviously the momentum that LSU is building, having just landed DJ Pickett and doing it under the radar, has me a little bit nervous. It's also interesting that Jaboree Antoine, who had Miami, Florida State, and LSU in his top three, has actually kicked Florida State out of the top three. It's going to come down to Miami versus the Tigers. Blue, I know he's not a Florida kid, but knowing you've had a chance to watch Jaboree Antoine before. What are your impressions?
Really good football player. And he sat out 7 games last year. He had a broken collarbone, which kind of got in the way of his season, but he came back towards the end of the year. This is a kid as a sophomore, he played 2 ways, played wide receiver as well. Definitely a track kid, a track and field kid, long jump at 20.4, which is really, really good. And then he triple jumped 43.1 this past year. And the kid's a really good runner too. He ran, a 43 in the 300-meter hurdle. So, I mean, he's a tremendous football player and a great athlete and a great asset. And obviously, right now, Miami's in that mode that if they can, certainly Pickett was the number one guy. I mean, and that on everybody's board, not just Miami's, and, a solid football player. And like you said, it's not over till it's over because, there's a lot of things to do. But in the meantime, you'd like to get somebody, like a Jaboree to kind of solidify just in case. And even if he does, you get 2 really solid football players. But definitely a guy that you got to really, really respect. I've watched him a lot on film. I saw him 2 years ago at a camp up actually was in Tallahassee. I saw him. So, it's he's one of those guys. He's definitely one of those guys. Not the Pickett level, and maybe not a couple of other players that they're going at, but he's certainly a really, really good game changer.
Yeah, and there definitely seems to be some momentum for Miami on this one, as he's going to be announcing on July 20th. That's 2 days from now on Saturday. Chad Simmons from On3 Sports did put in an RPM prediction. That's the On3 version of a crystal ball. He put the prediction in for Miami to land Jaboree Antoine. again, you got LSU has me a little shook, so I'm not completely ruling out the Tigers, but I know Miami's been working very hard for Jaboree Antoine, and it's kind of ironic, Blue, if it ends up playing out this way, where DJ Pickett, who is not a Miami kid, but a Florida kid with Miami ties in his family, he ends up going to LSU. Now Miami's trying to land a guy who's in LSU's backyard. And I know the Cajun connections, Blue, are going to be part of that with Lance Guidry and Dennis Smith and Shannon Dawson and others on Miami staff having Louisiana ties. Do you think Miami's going to get some good news at the end of the week for Jaboree Antoine?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I love Chad. Chad's a great guy, but I take those crystal balls with a grain of salt because they crystal balled Pickett to Miami last week.
Well, and Oregon as well. Oregon is getting most of the crystal balls.
Well, the Oregon connection is Phil Knight said that it's unlimited. He's going to open up the pocketbook. He's going to put everything he can to win a national title there. And obviously they got a great recruiting class going. But, yeah, I think Miami's got a really good shot. And I think for the reasons you mentioned, he'll come in and he'll compete for playing time right away. He's that good. He's going to push everybody. His connection to, as you said, to Guidry and also Dennis Smith being from that area, and certainly some of the players that some of the defensive players that have been from Miami and the offensive players as well. You could always play the Ed Reed card and the Reggie Wayne card and guys who have done real well out of the Louisiana area here in South Florida. So Miami's got a really good shot, but like you said, in this day and age, you never know anymore.
Yeah, Miami's also going after one of the top cornerbacks in the class, who's a South Florida kid, but he's a Florida Gators legacy. I want to talk about Ben Hanks when we come back. Larry Blustein, our boy Blue, is with us. We're only getting started. You guys want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I'm only getting started with FanDuel. Yeah, I always laugh when people are like, oh, well, what am I going to bet on in the middle of July? Well, we've had all this soccer, MLS games going on. I want to bet on Inter Miami against Toronto FC yesterday. You've got NBA Summer League. The Miami Heat have covered their last couple of spreads, by the way. Football's going to be here before you know it. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. And if you're looking at futures bets, by the way, you got, Miami over under 9.5 wins. That is on the table. You can already place a wager on Miami at Florida on August 31st. So head out to FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Earlier this week, Kenton Gibbs and I, we co-host Locked On ACC. We did a Miami preview for this coming season. We've done a North Carolina State preview. We're going to be doing a preview for Virginia Tech coming up. We always talk about the lawsuits between Florida State and the ACC and Clemson and the ACC. There's always something going on at Locked On ACC, so make sure you check that out. We got our boy Blue, Larry Blustein, with us. So, Blue, another player, Miami is recruiting hard. I don't know when exactly he plans on announcing anything, probably sometime in the fall. But, you've got Booker T. Washington cornerback, Ben Hanks Jr., 4-star player, and Miami's been very involved in his recruitment. Now, what might stand in Miami's way here is the fact that Ben Hanks Sr. is a former Florida Gator. But what can you tell us about Ben Hanks? I'm sure you watch him a lot.
A lot. From youth football right to Doral Academy and then over to Booker T. Washington. And I had a chance to watch Dad, back in the day at Miami High. Just a little footnote is when Ben went to Florida, Steve Spurrier's number 11 was retired, and he gave it up to Ben Hanks Sr. So, it's tough to beat a legacy, but, and I will put this in, perspective. Maurice Crumb's son went to Notre Dame, and he was a stud here. And, I can go on and on about the players from everywhere that don't always go. And the thing is I remember back at the one of the event days at Miami. I'm trying to think when it was. It's just, one of those days where I had a little combine, camp action. And one of the coaches, and I was talking to Ben, and his son came up, and as he was walking away, and one of the coaches, I don't want to say who, but they said to me, you know what? You win national championships with guys like that. And
Wow.
that kind of stuck in my head a little bit, and saying, yeah, Dad's a Gator, but his ties aren't as heavy as they used to be. I had mentioned to his dad when I saw him at that camp that day, I said, hey, you know what? Florida has got to be a lock. And he goes, not necessarily. He says, he said, my son's going to make up his own decision wherever he feels comfortable. And being the fact that they live 15 minutes from the University of Miami, and they have a huge family that lives down here, a lot of friends that would like to see him play. And, when I had Drake Hylton on the show, and he said, my parents would much rather drive the 5 hours than fly to 5 hours to California.
Oh.
And I think that stuck with me a lot with Ben. You get an opportunity. Miami, the furthest Miami goes, they'll go, before any home game, they go to Gainesville. So it's a good opportunity this year to, take the kid up there and let him decide for himself. Maybe that game may be the deciding factor. You never know. And I'm sure he'll be up there, getting an opportunity to check it out. But solid kid, really great hips. He could put on pounds, which he will. He's rather thin right now, but athletic wise, he jumps out of the building. Very intelligent kid, great football IQ. And like I said, I've been watching him since his days in youth football league. And, certainly somebody, if you're a towner like they are from Overtown and a product of that environment, you want to stay close to home because that's where the family is.
Yeah, I know obviously DJ Pickett was and is the prize, but he's drifting further away from Miami now that he's verbally committed to LSU. But if Miami can land one of Jaboree Antoine or Ben Hanks Jr., keeping in mind they did already land, Chris Ewald, and we're going to talk about some of the other DBs Miami has landed. This can still end up being an excellent defensive backs class, despite missing out on target number one.
Yeah, and plus all the guys that you have coming in that that you haven't really had a chance to look at, and what you have returning, some of the portal kids, and then over the next couple of years, like I said, Miami's success this season is going to really set the tone for the next 3-4 years. And if they're recruiting off of 2 back-to-back average seasons like they are now, and being a top 10 class and recruiting a top 5 last year, the roof is off if they start putting together 10 and 11 win seasons.
Now, you haven't been on this show since Miami landed Hylton Drake Stubbs, who you referenced earlier. That was a couple weeks ago. He's this 4-star safety out of Mandarin High School in Jacksonville. It's nice to see Miami developing more of a footprint in Jacksonville now, which, of course, is Gator country traditionally. And, Drake Stubbs, Blue, this is someone who's a high-ranked 4-star now. I know he's on the verge of maybe getting a 5th star. I know Rivals posted an article about that, how this is a guy, Stubbs, who's like knocking on that door. I'd love to hear your scouting report from what hopefully can be a great safety of the future for Miami.
Miami's top recruit, without a doubt, in that 2025 class. And I know you have, the lineman from Gorman, and you also have Gavin Nix, but Hylton is he's a different story. I've had a chance to watch him. Saw him in the state championship game last year. Saw him in the offseason twice. This year, I kept saying this from the beginning. I said, he's going to Miami. I don't know what this USC thing is, because why would you show up 2-3 times to a Miami in the spring if you're not going to go there? And that's
right.
One of the things I had. I was sitting there at one of the spring scrimmages that I went to, and I was standing there, and all of a sudden this gentleman came up to me, and he goes, "Are you Larry Blustein?" I said, "Yeah." He said, my son thinks the world of you." I said, "Oh, okay. Who's your son?"
Awesome.
And he says, he told me, and his son was right there, and he had him take 2 pictures with me. And I said, "I thought you were pretty much going to USC." and he said, well, right now, we'll see what happens. But I kind of knew, and I said this to everybody whenever I was on any of the shows, when we do our podcast every Monday night on the Six Ring Canes, I told them, I said, he's going to Miami. There's no doubt. I mean, and that's the explanation when he came on the show with me a couple of weeks ago. And he said to me, he goes, Larry, the whole thing is I want my parents to see me play. And, if they're going to jump on a plane and go 5 hours, it's going to be kind of wear and tear on them. But if they jump in a car and come 5 hours, it's not going to be so bad. And they'll come on a Friday, well, they'll hang out during the day with us, and, and then even the away games, we got an opportunity, because everything's kind of, not far from driving, because remember, when you're in Jacksonville, going to South Carolina or North Carolina is not that bad,
That's right.
And in Florida State. So, he's a dude. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, he's a guy, and he deserves a 5-star. I don't see why he never got one in the first place. But if they give it to him, that's fine. I'm, me with stars, I'm not really. It's productivity that wins out. But Hylton's he's the prize catch. I mean, to me, in a way, he's my Elijah Lofton for that next class. He's a guy that people don't realize how great he's going to be down the line.
And boy, Mandarin is just loaded with talent. Miami got Derek Plaz from there, the offensive lineman in the last cycle, who they love. Hylton Stubbs coming in this cycle. And boy, Blue, I would love to land his teammate on the offensive side of the football, Jaime Ffrench. And I know obviously that he is one of the top players in the country, 5-star receiver. So everybody wants Ffrench, and every couple of weeks he seems to be trending to one place or another. Texas has had a lot of trends for Ffrench, but I keep hearing that Miami is very much in the thick of it for Ffrench. He's
been down. He's been down a few times. And like I said, I mean, you said they have a lot of talent, and they do. I mean, that Tramel Jones is going to FSU, their quarterback. They have, they just got 3 new kids in over the last month and a half, 2 DBs and also a lineman. So, I mean, they're going to be figuring they're 6A this year. So it'll probably be between them and Armwood, who comes out of that north area, and or West Boca. But I just think that the Mandarin, as you said, they're loaded. They do a great job. I saw them twice this summer. I saw them up in Florida when I was up there, and I also saw them at UCF. They're 7-on-7. Also, their linemen. They're, Jaime didn't come because obviously he was on recruiting visits. That's the only drawback sometimes when you go to these 7-on-7s, especially in June, because these kids should travel. July, they close down NCAA schools. So, these kids can't go anywhere. There's no visits because they're not open. It's a good kid. I mean, and I like him a lot in this class. And like I said, combined to what they have already and what they're going to get, I think this is the secondary is really starting to develop into something.
Absolutely, it is. And I want to talk more about what Miami's tone on the recruiting trail has been like. And the reason why I need to pick Larry Blustein's brain on this is nobody goes to more high school games. Nobody goes to more camps and combines than Blue. So he's been watching through all these coaching staffs that Miami's had for, the past few decades. Blue has been out there watching all of them in action. I would love Blue's take on what Mario Cristobal and his staff have been doing out there. So my friends, you want to keep it locked. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. I love this Locked On network, and Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today, and it's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. We got the man, the myth, the legend, Larry Blustein with us. So, Blue, you and I, we've had a lot of candid conversations for the past several years about, what Miami's doing on the recruiting trail and areas where some of the previous staffs have just not done a good enough job. What's been now heading into season number 3 been your report on Mario Cristobal and his assistants being out on the trail and the work that they're putting in?
Well, the one thing, it all starts up at top, and we say that all the time. You look at the people that Cristobal's work for, Greg Schiano, somebody like a Nick Saban. They're workers. They're guys who burn the midnight oil plus, and that's the difference. He's only going to get coaches that have the right mindset, the same objective, not afraid to put in the hours, not afraid to watch a lot of film, or make sure they're active on social media or whatever it is. And that's the one thing that Miami separated themselves from the last 2-3 regimes, maybe even 4 regimes, is the fact that they're out there all the time. They're workaholics. When they have events at their own place and the parents are there, they make sure they put the best feet forward. Not so bad when you have like a Jason Taylor strolling out to meet some of the families that come. Not a terrible thing to have a Kevin Beard, who played at Miami, a ringing endorsement, for a guy who's one of the top recruiters in the country. Not a bad idea when you have 2 coordinators that are really in tune to what's going on. And then obviously an offensive line coach who's been there, done that. He's stayed the course. He's had some great, whether it be FIU or Marshall or at Oregon, and right here, he's got some good linemen. And then, like I said, it starts at the top. Mario Cristobal is relentless. His reputation precedes him. People understand if you come to Miami, and especially in this climate now, he just took over. You take over a program, and you got to put your own print into it. And he said that to me. I still remember in that April meeting him in his office and talking to him, and he took out the roster and he goes, "I can guarantee you in 2 years, it won't look anything like this." And I keep telling you that. You look at the 2022 roster and you compare it to now, everything's changed. Everything's changed. Coaches, every year he tweaks his coaching staff. And, the whole thing is obviously what you want to do is just surround yourself with some really, really good people. And, down the line, obviously, Jason Taylor is going to be a commodity in the NFL because he loves coaching. He loves doing it. You look at Dawson. He's going to be a guy that obviously is going to get his own job someday. So what Miami needs to do is keep plugging in those coaches, and they have done a great job. Nicholson's a big-time guy. You talk to any of the, Ezekiel Marcelin or any of those linebackers, Gavin Nix, they love the guy. So that's what you want out of your staff, and that's the one thing. And Miami's been everywhere. Saw them during the spring at a lot of places. They made sure, and the whole thing is they keep some people home, but they're in Vegas, they're in California, they're up and down the coast. They use the ties that they have in Texas and also Louisiana. And that's it's a huge thing. And this is a whole different staff. And I talked about this with somebody a couple of weeks ago where I said, you look at Mario's tweaked his staff from year one to the point where he's getting more and more of what he wants and may not be finished. Maybe next year they add another piece or 2. And also what's been important is some of the people they brought on as analysts. The recent hire of Frank Tucker, I think is way beyond anybody doesn't understand. Frank's a great kid.
Guy.
He's a hard worker.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he and I'm sure you've been in similar circles with Frank for a long time. He and I have crossed paths a lot over the last couple of years, and as soon as I saw Miami was hiring him among some others, I thought that was a great move, a huge move. And Blue, Miami right now, they've got 18 verbal commits for 2025 and a top 10 class in the country at this moment. Yet I get the sense that there's a lot of recruiting battles that are going to go into the fall because I keep hearing that a lot of players, they want to see Miami actually win on the field before they make a final decision. Because again, they're recruiting very well, but they're recruiting off 7 and 6. If this team performs on the field the way we think they can, how important will wins on the field be for some of these players who are still undecided?
Yeah, huge. And then the fact is you take a look at Miami getting some of these kids from far away, from California, from Texas, and from Oklahoma, and wherever, and having the 2 kids from Vegas, one here, and you had Brevin Jordan before, and that's not an easy sell because that's an area, and I went to school out there that you have a regional bias out there. And if you have USC and UCLA coming in with Arizona State and Utah and schools like that, it's tough. It's tough to pry yourself and come all the way east. It's not something that's very common. So, and they've done it, and you got to give, the credit to, the coaching staff and somebody like a Mirabal who definitely is done well. So yeah, unquestionably what Miami does on the field is going to add to it. These guys that are here and taking, here's the thing too. A lot of these studs that have come aboard, Hylton, all these kids are putting their faith into the fact that what's going to happen is where they want to be, and they think it's all going to happen. And I agree. Over the next 2 years, Miami could be. I've said publicly this year, Miami will be a top 12 team. They're going to be a playoff team. They just have to. The schedule plays into it. Obviously, they got tough games at Louisville, maybe a trap game at the end against Syracuse, but also you have home games, against Virginia Tech and FSU, and then the road game against Florida. Other than that, Miami can take care of business. There's 5 games that, that they've got to come to play. The rest of the games, I think that they pretty much can control their own destiny. So, yeah, it's going to play into it. I think by October, November, you'll have you may have a couple of flips, because you remember, this thing don't get going until December. And when December 20th comes around and they sign on that dotted line and they're on campus in 2 years, okay, the gate closes. But up until now, and I agree with you, Mario Cristobal and his staff, he tells them, no, we don't care who it is. We're going after them. And I think as they play and they perform, because, offensively, I mean, they're going to score 40 plus every game. They just have that type of, you have a quarterback, you have an offensive line, you got a great running game. You have some receivers that, have a lot of potential. So, yeah, they're going to sell themselves. And hopefully a lot of these kids you never know how a Pickett would flip. You never know how some of these kids that they've targeted that went to other schools will say, wait a minute, they're having a lot of fun down there.
I love it. And guys, make sure you listen to Larry's radio show, because again, Blue, he's got the most informative show in the country. And you're going to be on WQAM, I assume, back to normal Mondays, right, Blue?
Yeah.
With playoffs being over. What can fans expect this coming Monday?
And what we've done the last 4 shows, is we've had all the University of Miami commitments for 2025, and also with Darian Coleman for 26. This next week, we're going to do it again. We've had Ezekiel Marceline on. We've had Amari Wallace on. We've had everybody. We've had Nickel on. We've had everybody who has committed. They love it. They love to come on. In this next couple of weeks, we're going to do the same. And we're into since the NCAA schools are closed, we're into our Ivy League phase now. We have Ivy League head coaches on. And you'd be surprised. Everybody looks at Ivy League schools. Oh, it's all academic. Yeah, we had Coach Tony Reno on the other night from Yale. And, if you guys follow football in any way, my three quarters of the Miami Dolphins staff are Yale graduates, including their head coach. Yeah. So, you take a look at their importance. He goes, yeah, we want students, but we want football players too. And they just had 4 kids drafted in the last 5 years in the NFL. So, yeah. And then next week we get a chance to have Harvard on, new head coach after 30 years. They changed. And last year, I think I related the story when we were talking to the Coach Murphy, and he was talking about when Fitzpatrick came to Harvard, and how, here's a guy who he put him in for a play and told him to just kneel down or, go out of bounds. And the kid takes off to the right and he trucked the cornerback. The guy never got up, and he said he was my quarterback from then on, he says.
Wow. That's fantastic. Well, great stuff as always from Larry Blustein. Make sure you follow him on X at Prep Red Zone FL. Blue, thank you so much for taking the time, and enjoy your weekend coming up.
Thank you, Alex.
That is the man, the myth, the legend. Folks, we will talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.